Hi guys, welcome to another tutorial. I know it's been a long time since my last video, but there's been a lot of people asking about multiplayer. So what I wanted to do, I'm going to do a series on multiplayer full body, and my hope is that by the end of this we'll have a very basic community style game with full body avatars. We may be using Ready Player Me for this, most likely. I've been using it a lot lately and I really like it. We're going to be using Mirror for these videos. Later on I may do one on Photon Fusion. I've also been working in Fish Network. But the fundamentals here will carry across the board for all of them. Even with netcode for game objects, the setup for this video, they're virtually identical for all of them, with the exception of Photon Fusion because the inputs are handled differently. If I do a video on that, that'll make sense. But don't worry about it right now. We're going to be using Mirror. And in this video, we're just going to be setting up a network rig that spawns. And then you'll have, a spawned player, VR player on the basic. And the next one, we'll start bringing in other assets like Final AK and stuff like that so that you start getting an experience. Okay, so I don't edit my videos, and I'm going to try to talk as little as possible when I'm going through this. Some people like my voice, some people complain about it. I honestly don't care either way. So you're here to learn something, and I'm going to try to teach it to you. I've already imported a VR interaction framework. It's already working. It's tested. It's set up. I'm using it as OpenXR. If you go to your project settings, you'll see that I'm using OpenXR as my in multipass. I've already got everything set up, so you can set this up however you want. If you're doing Oculus standalone, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that VR interaction framework is working for whatever platform that you're doing. The code that I'm doing here doesn't matter what you're aiming for. I just typically go for OpenXR because I can hit any platform coding in OpenXR. I typically don't use Oculus anything or anything that ties me to one platform, given that I do multi-platform. So just know that. Okay, so I'm in the empty scene. If you go to BNG Framework Scenes and then you double click on empty, I typically use this just for testing. I want to point out that it doesn't matter what rig you use. You can use the rigid body rig, you can use the empty rig or the basic rig or the bare bones as they call it. It doesn't matter. We're just going to use the bare bones, not the bare bones. I think this is just the basic rig or something like that. Whatever the rig is in this scene. But you can use any rig from VR Interaction Framework. It doesn't matter. First thing we're going to do is we need to import Mirror. So let's go to Windows, Package Manager. Let's find Mirror. Oh, got to go to My Assets. If you haven't already downloaded this asset, go to the asset store, add it to your assets, and bring it in. Click on Mirror, click on Import, and I will pause for the sake of your sanity. Okay, so once you've got that import done, let's come back over to our assets. You'll see you've got Mirror. Now, there are plenty of videos teaching you about Mirror, about the RPCs, the sync vars, the sync dictionaries, all that stuff that has to do with Mirror. I'm going to be concentrating mainly on how to set up a rig in this. We will hit on most of those things going through this, but don't come in here thinking that this is a Mirror specific tutorial. I'm going to be using Mirror and I'll be going quickly, and this really isn't a tutorial about Mirror. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click. We're going to create an empty. We're going to call this Network Manager. You need a Network Manager in your scene. I think I made that. Yeah. Okay. Let's just go ahead and reset the transform so that it zeroes out. Not that it really matters, but for the sake of clean code. On this, we want a network manager, so let's add component, network manager. Okay. We also want to add our transport, KCP transport. A lot of these things won't make sense to you. I do implore you to go through the stuff from Dapper Dan or others doing videos on mirror. Very valuable information. The stuff we're going to be getting into is a lot more complicated, so I do suggest that if you are not familiar with mirror, that you start going through those tutorials. We also want to add a manager HUD. What this does is it puts the connect buttons and stuff on your screen, so you can click on them with your mouse. That way you can actually use the emulator, and you don't actually have to put your headset on. You can click connect to test everything. Okay, so once we've got this set up, we've actually got our network going. So we can actually test this, and we can hit play. And what we should see, transport initialized, host, we got a player prefab empty, but everything is working. So now I have our network manager set up. So next, so clear that out. Let's go ahead and create a scripts folder. Let's go to assets. Let's go ahead and create a scripts folder. And we'll call this, we'll just call it scripts. For the sake of simplicity, double click in there, right click, create a folder, and we'll call this rig scripts. Just try to keep it tidy so you know where everything's at. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new script, and we're going to call this hardware rig. And then we're going to create another script, and we're going to call this hardware hand. Then one more script, and we're going to call this hardware hand. Not even sure why I call them that. Disclaimer, sometimes I am thinking too much and I overthink things. Fast forward past it. I don't edit the videos, but let's start over. I just deleted all those, so let's create a new one. What do I want to call this? Because I don't want it to be hardware. Honestly, I can't think of what else to call it, so I'm just going to call it hardware. Why not? You can call it anything you want. These are just going to be scripts that are going to go on our rig, on our XR rig. So let's create script. Well, screw it. Yeah, hardware rig. New script, create hardware hand. New script, hardware head. Okay, so we got hardware rig, hardware hand, hardware head. Let's go ahead and create a new folder. We'll call this hardware scripts. Take these and just drop them in there. Let's create a new folder, might as well. We'll call this network rig. And here we're going to create a new script. Call this network rig. Create a new script. Call this network hand. New script. We'll call this network head. File save. Not entirely sure how I got into the sample scene, but let's go back to BNG framework. Let's go back to scenes, back to empty. I'm going to save this as scenes, and I'm going to call this network scene. Just for now. We can always save it as a different scene. We're going to be working in one scene for now, so that just makes sense. See that it's saved here. So let's go back to our scripts, and let's go back into our scripts. Let's go into hardware. Let's find hardware rig. Okay, so the way this works is you always leave an XR rig in the scene. As soon as this loads up, you're interrupting me. Please stop. I'm trying to teach things here to some young minds, multiple minds. Anyway, you leave the XR rig in the scene. We're going to be spawning a network rig that matches its positions and rotations to your local rig, which you will have client authority over, and that will make sense here in a minute. So let's open up our hardware rig script. And what we need is, bear with me here. Let's go and get rid of this. What we need is we need references to our other scripts. So we need a public hardware hand, left hand. We need a public hardware hand, right hand. And then we need a reference to our head. Public hardware head. Headset. We'll just call it headset. And then we're going to have to get some positions and rotations of those objects. So we need to store those. So what we're going to say is public vector 3 player position, because we need to know the position of our actual rig, which is going to be the player controller in the end. And then we need its rotation, so we're going to say public. Oh, and I'm making these public just for troubleshooting, so that you can actually see the rotations and the positions changing. These don't have to be public. Once you know that it's working, you can make these private. Not really that big of a deal. Most of the time, if you watch my previous videos, I've said that before. I'm only making these public so that we can see them in the inspector to make sure that everything's working. That way I don't have to use debug.log to see it. I can just look over in the inspector and see it. But once you know it's working, you can get rid of the public, make them private, or whatever you want to do. It's not going to hurt them to be public. Anyway. Player rotation. So here we're storing the actual position and rotation of the actual player controller. And then we need the same thing. So let's just copy this, right? Let's make this easy. And then we need the same thing, but we need left hand. Position. And then we need right hand position. And in this tutorial, which is different from my previous ones, I'm actually going to type this out because I want you guys to understand what's going on here. So we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it for the right hand. I'm actually going to make this even easier. I'm going to grab this and paste this, and we're going to say right hand. Oops, got a little typo there. Trying to make my life easier, and I'm messing it all up. It's actually left. Okay, so we got our left hand position, left hand rotation. This should be rotation. See, I'm messing it all up. This is what happens when I type things out. You can see how I mess things up. So we got our position, rotation for our player. We got our position and rotation for our left hand and our right hand. And then we also need our head position. So let's do, I'm just going to type this out. Public vector 3 headset position. And we're going to say public vector 3 headset rotation. And correct my typo. So what we're doing is we're going to grab our positions and our rotations of our hand and our headset locally, and we're going to be storing these here. So in late update, let's just do void late update. We want this in late update because I don't want to put it in update just to show you why, but you have to have it in late update so that you don't have any lag from your visuals from the network rig. And I'm going to copy and paste this from my original script just because, for the sake of time. So our player position. Sorry, I had to find my bug there. This is supposed to be a quaternion. Okay. So our position, which is actually going to be our player controller's position and rotation, is stored here. Left-hand position and rotation is stored here. And then, so we're just storing the position and rotation of our actual player controller, and then our left and right hand, our head position here, so that we can reference that for our network rig when we spawn it. Go ahead and save that up. So now, let's go back to our rig scripts. Let's open up network rig and let's find our network rig. Let's go ahead and open that up. Now here, let's go ahead and get rid of this. We want a reference to our hardware rig. So let's say public hardware rig. Hardware rig. And then we want a reference to our networked left hand, right hand, and our head. So let's do a network hand, left, network hand, and then public. Whoop! Come back here. Public network hand, right, network hand, and then let's do a public network head, which these are the scripts that we created earlier, and we'll call this network head. Now for this, we need to make this a network behavior because we're using mirror. So at the top, we're going to say using mirror. And our model behavior here, we're going to change this to network behavior because this is going to be used across the network and it needs to be able to reference this. And then we're going to say on start. So once we have our variables here, we're going to say void start. We're going to say if is local player, okay, hardware rig equals game object dot find with tag player, which I believe by default it's already set to player for the rig, but we're going to check it real quick here in a second. Get component hardware rig, which is the script that we created that we are going to be putting on the player. So let's kick back over to Unity real quick. Yeah, see, it's already tagged as player, so we're just going to use that. What's going to happen is when this starts, if we're the local player, so we're not the remote player, because you got to remember this gets spawned on the local side and the remote side. So when this thing spawns, if we're the local player, so our player, the one that's on our computer, we're going to look for our hardware rig, and we're going to find it by finding the tag player, and then we're going to get the hardware rig component that we're going to put on that player. So in practice, let's see what happens. So if we come over to our player controller. Actually, we're not going to see what happens, but we're going to go ahead and put this rig on here. So let's click on player controller. Go ahead and get rid of all, not get rid of it, but just collapse everything so we can see what's going on. Let's add component hardware rig. And then we need to add these other scripts as well. So let's come up to our XR rig. Let's expand out our player controller. We're going to come down to our left-hand controller anchor. And here we're going to add a component, and we're going to say hardware hand. Okay, and then same thing for our right hand. Come down to our controller anchor and then add hardware hand. And then for our head, we need to go to our center eye. Let's go ahead and collapse this out. Add hardware head. So our head is coming off of our camera position, and our hand positions are going to be coming off of our controller positions. So let's come back up here to our player controller, and then we can assign these. So let's take our center eye and we'll throw it on our head, and then our right hand is going to be our right hand controller anchor where we put that script, and then our left hand is going to be our left hand controller anchor. These scripts are just identifiers right now. We're going to use these later in other videos. Right now we're just going to leave those scripts completely blank, and they're just identifier scripts. So that's the reason we're leaving them empty. So don't question that yet. We'll get to that in later videos. But for now, this is what we need to do. Okay, so now we're going to create our network rig. Let's go ahead and collapse this down. Let's just right click on the hierarchy here, and we're just creating empty. And we're going to call this network rig. Under this, we're going to have 3 empties. So we're going to create an empty, and we're going to call this network head. And then we're going to create another empty. Call this network hand. We'll call it left hand. And then another one is a child. Call this network right hand. Now, you might want this to have a body so you can actually see it. So while we're in here, before we start adding the scripts, let's just go ahead and add a 3D object, and we'll I don't know, we'll add a spear. Okay, for the head. I don't know how big your head is, but we're going to first, we'll just call this head GFX. Sure. And then on this, you want to make sure you get rid of this collider so that it's not colliding off of the XR rig when it gets spawned. We only need a visual. So let's make this, I don't know, 0.5 on all axes, if you will. Make it kind of small. And then if you want it to have like a visor, you can add a 3D object, add let's add a cube, and we'll call this visor. Okay, and then if you come in here, where are we? Why are you not zeroed out? Totally should be. Okay, well, okay, there it is. Not sure why it's below. Oh, I know why it's below ground, because we're at 0 and nothing else is. Okay, so on the visor, let's just grab the scale. Bring it down. Bring it forward on the Z. Scale it down. Bring it back probably. And then, I don't know, bring it back. So that way you know which way is forward. So this is like your glasses, right? Let's go ahead and save that up. File, save. That's why. Let's go ahead and reposition the network rig to 0. It'll bring all the children with it. Not a big deal. There we go. Let's go ahead and turn these off so we can see what's going on. That head still looks quite large. So maybe we make it 0.25 across the board. That looks more normal. There we go. Okay, so now for your hand, do the same thing. So let's go ahead and create a. No, I didn't want to do that. What the heck? Delete. Let's go ahead and create a 3D object, and we'll just use spears for now. Later, we're gonna turn these into a full body, avatar. So I don't know what a good size is here. 0.1 maybe. Does that look good? Yeah, that looks good. Control C. Then you're going to do the same thing here. Call this right hand G. You won't even see these later. We won't even be using it. Like I said, once we incorporate a full body, you won't even see these. So this is just so you can see the hands and the head when we actually spawn this thing. Okay, so network rig, add component, network rig. Hardware rig is going to find that when we actually spawn this thing. So don't worry about this. This is just here to make sure this is working. So now let's go down to our hand, our network head. We're going to add network head. I think I made a network head, didn't I? Oh, where are you? Network. Did I make a network head? Did I misspell it? Hand. Oh, I misspelled it. It's all right. Delete it. So it doesn't do anything at the moment, and then I'm just going to create a new one. Network head. Head. There we go. Okay, so come down to the head, add component, network head. Network head. Why aren't you showing up? Oh, we gotta go fix them. I gotta go fix my scripts. Network head. In case anybody was trying to type along with me, that's what I needed to do. Network head, not networky head. Reload. All right, back to our network head. Add component, network head. There it is. Left hand, add component, network hand. Right hand, add component, network hand. Okay, let's come back up to our network rig. You can see we can assign left hand, right hand, and network head. So grab our network head, let's drop it in there. Let's grab our left hand, drop it in there, and let's drop our right hand and drop it in there. Now, if we go back to our network manager, well, first, before we do that, we got to create a prefab. So let's go ahead and create a new folder in our assets, and we're going to call this prefabs. In our prefabs, grab your network rig, drag it in there. Okay, there's our network rig. Up here, delete it. Come up to your network manager, and down here where it says player prefab, drag that over there. Nope, we're not done yet. Almost forgot, we got to add the components. Oh man, so much setup. What are you gonna do? Okay, so you have to use network transforms for this. They can be childed, so on the main rig here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a component, network transform, and we're gonna use unreliable. And if you come down here, you can see that it's already grabbed our network rig, which we need. We need that. And then we're going to add another one. Add another one, network transform unreliable. On this one, you can see we need to assign it. So we're going to assign the head. And then we're going to add another one, network transform. And then if you pop it open, we're going to add our left hand. And then we're going to do another one, network transform unreliable, and then for the target we're going to add our right hand. And then one more thing that we have to add so that the network knows that it is something is a network identity. This just makes it an object that can be networked so that Mirror actually knows that it's a networked object that it's supposed to look at and all that jazz. So now what should happen, let me check these real quick. Okay, we've got our rig. We have our hand. We have our, oh, see, I messed up. That's why we always check. Right hand. So we got our left hand, right hand, and we should have our head. You know what, let's put those in order. So we've got our network rig. I'm gonna make this our head, network head. I like to keep things straight. This is going to be our left hand, this one is going to be our right hand. So right hand, left hand, head, rig, and then a network identity. File, save. Okay, so now we have our network rig. Let's come down to the network manager. See here where it says player prefab, we should be now able to drag that in there, because now Mirror sees this as an actual network object with a network identity. Okay, so in our prefab, let's go back and check and make sure that we don't have any of our colliders. So I've already gotten rid of the collider here. Let's come down to our left-hand graphics, and let's go and get rid of the spear collider. So let's go and remove that component, that way nothing's colliding. Okay. Go ahead and save that up, and now we got to finish up our network script. So go to your assets, go over to your scripts, come into rig scripts, come to network scripts, and let's find our network rig. Open up Sesame. Okay, so now where we left off, we're getting our hardware rig, and the reason I wanted to let's back up to why we stopped here and why we went ahead and set that up. What's going on here is if I hit play now, get you to where we're at, you'll see we have this dialog that pops up. So there's no prefab yet, but we just added our prefab. If I hit host, you can see that it spawned our network. And if we go to our network rig, you can see it found our local player controller, which is this guy. Okay, so the reason I put in there if is local player is so that it only does this for the local player. Because when this gets spawned in the remote, I don't want it to look. I only want it to look if I'm the local player. And that's how we found our player controller. I hope that makes sense. So let's get back to our script for our network player. Network rig, rather. So what we're going to do here is, now that we have references to our hardware rig and we have our left network hand and our right network hand, we can come down and we can say void late update. And again, we're doing this in late update because we want to have the other script have time to get those positions and rotations. What happens is if you just put it in update, the visuals will actually be a frame behind where you are. Not entirely sure why that works that way in late update, but that's the reason why I'm putting in late update. It actually makes the position of the spear, if you will, where your hand's supposed to be. So that's the reason I'm running this in late update. So what we want to do is we're going to check if hardware rig does not equal null. So if we found one. Now I'm going to put this in longhand because I don't want to get too complicated, but what we really could say is if we came up here and start and we could say this, but I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to type this out so that everybody knows, but we could say if is owned. So we could say this, if we don't own this object. So we got spawned on the remote. If we don't own it, we could just say this dot enabled equals false. Now what that would do is, if once this gets spawned on a remote, it would just disable the script and it wouldn't go through the rest of it. It would just disable it and say we're not going to do it. But for the sake of this, we're just going to do this. There's about 17 different ways to do this. We'll come back to that. That's more of a mirror thing. This isn't so much about mirror as it is about getting a rig spawned in mirror. So we're going to say if hardware rig does not equal null. So if we found one, and we're going to say our transform dot position. So the position of the network rig is going to equal. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to shorten this. We're going to say set position dot rotation, and we're going to say hardware rig dot position dot transform dot position. We're going to say hardware rig dot transform dot rotation. What this is going to do is it's going to make our network rig, our parent position, and rotation equal that of our hardware rig that is already in the scene. So hopefully that makes sense. Once it finds this hardware rig, we can match our position and rotation to wherever our hardware rig is at. Next, we're going to say left network hand dot set position transform dot set position rotation equals hardware rig dot left hand position dot that works. And then let's say hardware rig dot left hand rotation. Now if you remember, back in our hardware rig we set variables, left hand position, left hand rotation. So what we're doing is we're saying that our networked hands position and rotation equals our left hand position, left hand rotation from our hardware rig. So if you look at the hardware rig, we're saving that into a vector 3 and a quaternion. We're looking at these public variables. That's why I made those public. Pay no attention to what I said previous in the video. The reason I'm making these public is so that I can read them from the network rig. Anyway, I digress. So let's do the same thing for the right network hand. Dot transform dot set position and rotation equals our hardware rig dot right hand position. Oops, come back here. Right hand position hardware rig dot right hand rotation, right? And then we're going to do the same thing for the head. So we're going to say network head dot transform dot set position rotation equals our hardware rig dot what did I call it? What did I call it? I called it headset position. So come back over here and we'll say headset position and hardware rig dot headset rotation. So now when we fire this up, what should happen is we should be matching our transforms from our spawn network rig for its position of the actual player, its hands, and its head to our hardware rig's positions and rotations that we're saving from the hardware rig. So let me pause and make sure that I didn't miss anything, and then we'll test it. Okay, so now once we've made those changes, come back into Unity and just hit play. Make sure your headset's on, or if not, if you're just using the emulator, that's fine. Go and hit host, and you'll see that we have spawned a network rig. You can see that here, and you can see that I now have a spear, and my head and my hands are now matching my positions and rotations, right? There's no stutter or anything. So now what we want to do is we want to make a build, and we want to see if this spawns for the local and our remote friend that's going to try to join us. So let's go ahead and pause that. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so I can test it real quick, and then we'll do it. I actually wanted to show you guys this, but I'm actually going to do this in real time. If it messes up, we'll just fix it. But let's go ahead, file, build and run, and it's going to ask you for a file. And what I usually do is I'll come to my root, and I'll make a new folder, and then I'll name it builds, or build. That's fine. Rename this to build. That way it's in the same folder with it, and then we'll just come in here and we'll just call it build, and then select folder. It'll build. And I did that and I totally made a mistake. So let's go to File, Build Settings. You can see I had all the default stuff here selected. So let's just grab all of them and then hit the delete key to get rid of them, and then just add open scene because I only want to build this scene. So now let's build that and run it. We're going to use the same folder and then just select folder. Let's see what happens. Hopefully this builds quickly because I'm not going to pause it. See, I have this host server. Okay, we have stuff that's doing things. Escape. Close that window. So what we can do, because that's opening full screen, So let's go to project settings. Not wrong button. Edit project settings. Well, let's come down to player. And then down here you can see where it says full screen. Let's go ahead and make that windowed. And then if you come down here, we can make it resizable so you can actually change the size of it. Okay. File, save. Now let's build it. Okay. So over here I'm going to hit host. Now I've got this little dude, and you can see my visor's in the way. We'll fix that here in a second. So let's just move that over here. Let's hit play over here. Let's hit client. See, I've got my little dude here, but you can see now I've got two dudes. Right? So over here I'm going to click on my dude over here. You can see he's now moving. Click on my dude over here. See, I'm now moving. So now we have two players in the same spot. See, they kind of switch, and you can see my head moves around. This is actually the remote player. The head's always going to join because I've got my headset on. Hello. Okay. If you want to get rid of the, if you want to get rid of being able to see your visor, let's hit play. And this is going to come into play when we do full body as well. Let's go ahead and hit host. You can see I've got my thing going on here. If you come down to your camera, center eye camera, center eye anchor, and then open your camera, you can see you have a near field plane here, 0.07. You can see it disappears. You're not getting rid of your actual object. You're just making it where it doesn't render stuff that's that close to your dang head. So now if we unhit play and set 0.07 to 0.1 usually works pretty good. So let's go ahead and save that. File, save, hit play. Hit host. You can see I can't see my visor anymore, but there we are. Hello. Okay, so now we have transforms from a network rig spawning in. So now you have two player. Let's go ahead and I'm going to turn my headset off. And then we're just going to do this with the emulator. So save, file, build and run. And I can actually resize this window, resize it down. Let's go ahead and hit host. You can see I can walk around. Maybe I can, I don't know. Anyway, our little dude's there. Client. See, my other dude has been spawned. There we are. It's just our representation from the other side. And if I click here, you can see that I am moving around and I am good to go. Obviously, I can't move my hands independently, but you can see now we have a two-player game. Essentially, you now have two players in the same space networked. This is only local until you set up a relay system and all that jazz. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and you have a little bit understanding of how to set up a network rig and how it spawns. And in the next video, we're going to bring in full body to this and with Final IK and show you how all that works. And we'll just keep going down this rabbit hole until we have a community game. So I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. You guys have a good day. Keep on building.